Welcome to FO Talks. With me is Sebastian Schaefer. He's the director of the Institute for the Danube region and Central Europe, a regional think tank that is based in Vienna. He has frequently written for Fair Observer and spoken to us about the war in Ukraine, along with everything that you need to know about Central Europe. He has recently returned from Ukraine. He was in Kyiv and he got back earlier this month. Sebastian, thank you for speaking to us. And I want to just go right into the conversation. What did you see in Kyiv? How are things looking like in Ukraine?
Thank you very much, Rohan. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and to discuss these very, I think, important questions for our region. Yes, I returned beginning of May from another trip. And what I saw was unbreakable resilience, but also exhaustion. So we are next month, actually on the 11th of June, that war will have lasted longer than the First World War. And it shows, the life continues in Kyiv. You would not recognize if you are on the streets of Vienna, the streets of Paris, or the streets of Kyiv, if there would not be frequently air raid alarms, because life is just like there. It's a European capital. It's a very bohemian part of the city where you get your avocado toast, if you want. But at the same time, of course, the people are tired, the people are exhausted, and the people are constantly threatened with their own life because Russia keeps targeting civilian infrastructure.
Right. Before we began recording, when we were chatting, you were telling me about the mechanism of these air raid alerts. Can you just quickly tell our audience what really happens? How are people alerted? And how does that affect daily life?
Yeah, so you normally have an app. There is, for instance, a Kyiv digital app that includes these air raid alarms, or there are other apps where you get air raid alarms pushed directly to your phone. You can also normally hear them on the street. There are not each and every district has loudspeakers where you can hear that, but this is something that happens. And then, based on this, what you normally do is you go to a Telegram channel and check what's the threat and why is this air raid alarm happening. So if there is a fighter jet starting, then there will be an air raid alarm for the whole country, because it can reach potentially the whole country. If it's a ballistic missile that has a certain range, it has calculated what is the range, and then the air raid alarm is sounded only in those regions. Or if there is a drone attack, it's also clear that it cannot reach each and every part, depending on the type of drone, etc. And so what you do next is you check what is it, and then you calculate, is this a threat for me? And then you seek shelter, or you just go on with your life, because you can't constantly be interrupted by these kind of things. I had the situation, I was on my way to another appointment. I was on one of the big streets in Kyiv, Kreshatik, and then there was an air raid alarm. And I was checking, seeing that it's drones, and I thought, okay, it doesn't sound like an immediate threat to me. And then just a couple of minutes later, you hear drones being shot down in the outskirts of Kyiv, and then later on they will give you an all clear, and then life continues.
Right, and you're telling us about early May, and we're recording on the 26th of May. Things have drastically escalated, Sebastian, in the last week or so. Russia has launched large-scale missile attacks across Ukraine, especially hitting Kyiv. We've also seen the Oreshnik being used for the third time, but we're also seeing these KH-101 cruise missiles that are hitting civilian areas in Kyiv. Now, I want to ask you, why has Russia launched this out of a sudden? I mean, this is a clear escalation, which is different from exactly how things were just 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. There's two things for that, and neither of the two is related to what the Kremlin is saying officially, some sort of retaliation that they are claiming. Well, the first thing is Russia is losing on the battlefield. The pressure is mounting for Putin at home. There are talks about potential coups within the Kremlin floating around. So, of course, he escalates because he hopes to save himself with this. And the second thing is very clearly that there is an absolute blind eye from the current US administration when it comes to Ukraine. They have basically publicly abandoned Ukraine and focus on the mess they made in the Middle East with the Strait of Hormuz. And so I think the Kremlin, and especially Putin, thought that this is a good possibility to escalate. And we need to stress the escalation here. They have deliberately targeted civilian infrastructure, according to the EU's ambassador to Ukraine, that mentioned those numbers at the Globsec Forum in Prague, where I attended last week. In 2025, there were 4 days when the Russian Federation has not targeted civilian infrastructure. And there has not been a single day in 2026 when they have not targeted a civilian infrastructure. And this is a significant war crime escalation that they're doing. We need to really be open with this. They have not only tried to continue their genocidal attacks, they have destroyed several cultural institutions, including, for instance, the Chernobyl Museum that was just opened a couple of days earlier in April. And they have also targeted, for instance, the wastewater management treatment facility in Kyiv, targeting civilians in order to destroy infrastructure that is needed for each and everyone in that city that is still living there.
Right. And one of the interesting things that has come out in the last 2 days is that Russia has asked all foreign nationals to vacate Kyiv. Why this? I mean, what is Russia's plan here? And is Putin willing to reignite hostilities at a much larger scale by targeting Kyiv now?
I think so. Here again, we need to see that the Kremlin is using this as something that they are directing, on the one hand side, towards their audience at home. So what I said with the first thing that Putin tries to achieve is first and foremost, save himself, save face, change the narrative of the overall, 3-day special military operation that he called it in the beginning. And he's now stuck for more than 4 years in this war of aggression against Ukraine. So this is targeted towards the domestic audience on the one hand side to say like, yeah, we are going now we finally do everything, even if they don't have any advantage with regards to actually advancing towards Kyiv. They are just deliberately committing war crimes. This is the only thing that they are doing with this escalation. And the second thing is, of course, it's also a signal towards the international audience, showing like, hey, we can do that. Please, we will escalate. There's a threat, but I would put it in the same category when Medvedev was drunk texting with nuclear threats. This is something that is going in the same direction. So I don't expect it to be actually much worse than it already is. And I mean, yes, we have seen the highest amount of drones and rockets being launched on Kyiv, but this was not in the night of the 23rd and 24th of May. That was just a little bit earlier. So they are escalating, but the people in Kyiv have seen this before, and it just fits the overall threats that are coming out of the Kremlin. I don't expect that there's something substantial behind it, other than trying to deliberately destroy civilian life in Ukraine.
Yeah. Sebastian, what's been interesting is in the lead up to these increase in attacks and the Russian aggression is something that happened actually in Beijing. Putin was in Beijing where he met Xi Jinping, and this was on May 19th and 20th, almost 4 days after US President Donald Trump and his entourage of entrepreneurs and important people in the US were also in Beijing. So a lot of people were, of course, seeing why Putin was so eager to go to China. But once he's back is when these attacks have really picked up. So do you think that has some connection to this aggression?
I think first and foremost, we need to see that because the reason was also this, what was it, the 25th anniversary of the Friendship Treaty, or what it's called. So I think that was scheduled long before. So it's not something that happens spontaneously, I
Right.
would think. So, but yeah, of course, you're right. I mean, you can see it in a way that why not use that opportunity when I'm there anyways? And the US president was just there to also see if I can further escalate and if that would have any repercussions for me. And as it is at the moment, as I said, from the side of the United States administration, the Trump administration, and of course also from the Chinese side, this could easily be that they have said, okay, do what you think you must do. We're not interfering.
Well, let us talk about the Trump administration because they've been largely silent, especially this previous week. I mean, I was going through Trump's social media account. Everything is about Iran. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is currently in India. He's leaving India today. And despite these 3-4 days, he's not made a single statement on Russia, Ukraine. In fact, he's made statements on Iran coming to the negotiating table. So it's been absolutely a mum from the top leadership in the United States. Are you worried that they've lost interest in this war? And clearly, the Trump administration has tilted towards Russia, at least in some sense.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, this is the point. And there is this small possibility where I see this is really something that worries me is that because if the US administration allows Putin to do whatever he wants, then of course one of the main deterrents for an absolute escalation is gone. And this is really something, I mean, on the one hand side, it's worrying. On the other hand side, it's also, I wish it would be surprising, but it's not, because Trump is just erratically acting in so many different areas exactly like that. On the one day, he's focused on it because, maybe someone can profit off a tweet that he puts out there. On the next day, there is something else that bothers him because there's transaction because he needs to endorse someone or he wants to punish someone else. And ultimately, to be a leader in the 250 years of the existence of that former beacon of the free world, and to abandon a just fight for democracy, independence, and freedom in Europe is just, I don't have words for it anymore. It's unbelievable.
Sebastian, I want to also talk about how Europe is reacting and seeing this because I was going through American mainstream media. There was absolutely zero coverage about the Russian attacks. It was all about Iran. Then I was also looking at British mainstream media, both on the left and the right, even independent. Everything was still about Iran largely. I looked at French media. Again, Iran was the top story. When I looked at German media, is when it was different because there the top three stories were about Russian attacks on Kyiv. So that's what we're getting from mainstream media. But can you tell us, apart from media, how are European leaders seeing this renewed aggression? Are they worried that perhaps things could get out of control, and the kind of the somewhat stability that they had managed could spiral.
Yes, this is a very good observation, and it's also something where I would say, I mean, what's the immediate worry for certain politicians? Huh? So of course, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, or is it open right now? I don't know. I can't keep up. Closed and open and then closed and open again, and so this is something that impacts their electorate much more than whatever happens right now in Kyiv or any other Ukrainian city that is targeted by drones and rockets. By the way, from Iran as well, because they still provide that to the Russian Federation. So this has a much bigger impact, and therefore I have the feeling they are much more concerned. I have to say, though, that from Ursula von der Leyen to Friedrich Merz to Emmanuel Macron to also other EU leaders, they have condemned these attacks. So they are very much aware of it. And I think the challenge that we are seeing is these attacks will not change the nature on the battlefield in Ukraine. Ukraine is gaining momentum. It's very clear for the first time in, I think, almost 3 years, or even more than 3 years, Ukraine is gaining more territory than they are losing. So the momentum on the battlefield on the front line is shifting towards Ukraine, which means the Russian Federation will not be able to take Kyiv, which means they will also not pose a direct, immediate threat to the countries that you mentioned. So this will only repercussions much later down the line. And the challenge that I see is we have politicians that most of the time think until the next election. And the impact of what is happening in Hormuz is threatening this election, the next upcoming election, whatever it will be in the respective countries, much more than if cultural sites and civilians are being destroyed, obliterated in Kyiv at the moment.
Right. Well, Sebastian, you are absolutely correct, because I was going through recent reports, and Ukraine has gained more territory than they've lost this year. However, the battle fatigue is a reality, and young Ukrainians are now, they're putting up a fight when they're being drafted. They don't really want to fight, and I mean, we could say the same for Russia as well. There's battle fatigue over there. On the ground, it looks like a stalemate, but of course, Russia still has air power dominance. They're still openly striking Kyiv. They're also striking other cities. And what worries me is that when you look at the region beyond Ukraine, when you look at what the Trump administration is doing, they've pulled out Patriot missiles from Germany. They've also pulled out troops that were stationed in Germany. Now, given Russia and what they've learned from the Iran war as well, these drones and missiles are absolutely lethal. I mean, you need air defenses to somewhat hit them and neutralize them. And having none serves nobody any good. So how is Europe seeing this? Because it looks like the Trump administration needed these interceptors that they pulled out from Germany for the war in Iran. Do you think Europe is feeling vulnerable that suppose 2 or 3 missiles from Russia or drones from Russia, they enter European airspace? Do you think they'll be able to neutralize them? And what if the aggression spills over? And it's not just 2, 3 missiles and drones. It's more. It's hundreds. How nervous is Europe about this?
Well, Juan, I hope they are very nervous, because then they would finally act on it. Yeah? I think there is an awareness, but of course we are not as quickly as we should be, given the possible threat that you described, which I completely agree. I mean, it's very popular at the moment to speculate about scenarios, what the Russian Federation can or cannot do with regards to an attack on an EU and or a NATO member state. I think it's a good exercise that we have that. I think it's something that should be discussed. And of course, this is also something where I believe what is important is to raise awareness in the overall civilian population, because you don't want to know what it sounds like when there is an air raid alarm and there is a potential threat. You don't want to know what that does to someone. I don't want that my family knows what I have experienced when I was in Kyiv, which was not even comparable to what is happening over the past weekend. But still, it does something with you when there is an air raid alarm and you know that something is coming towards you. And before it comes so far, I think the main point is still, how do we prevent that? Support Ukraine with all we have. And we also need to understand that we cannot rely on an erratic administration in the White House that will continue to be there for the next years. Are we going to continue for 2-3 more years of that situation in Ukraine? No, we need to finally get ourselves together, act together, and do something with this regard. Something is happening, but it should be happening in a much faster pace. And if there are scenarios like that that contribute to an awareness also in the civilian population, because I think in the military realm in all EU member countries, or most EU member countries, I would say, there is a quite an awareness what potential threats are out there, but we also need to get the overall I would say security resilience within the European population needs to be increased.
Brilliant. Sebastian, thank you very much for speaking to Fair Observer. As always, it was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.